I was CEO of 2 medical companies at the time.
Fair.
So I was a busy guy. I did this on nights and weekends, and it was just fun. But friends came over and saw it and said, hey, I'd like one of those. And so I'd make them one, and they would pay me in wine. So some people started to give me cases of Magnums as payment for one device.
Okay.
Welcome to the Hospitality Podcast.
Where's the sauce? Come on, man. We just need him. This lamp. What is the last lamp?
Presented by Arthur Gomez
I just spent $8,000. Wow.
and Quentin Wind.
An idiot sandwich.
So pour yourself a glass because we're diving into the world of restaurants, kitchen and bar, the Hospitality Podcast.
Hello everybody, welcome to Breaking the Cork. It's finally season 2, and today we have a special guest with us as usual. Unfortunately, Quentin is on holiday today, so I will be on my own. I will be joined by Greg, the founder of Coravin. Basically, Coravin, it's a preservation system. You can use the devices of Coravin to preserve your wine for a few years. So it's very useful. Personally, I do have one. And this episode is not sponsored, by the way. It's just very interesting to have Greg on the podcast. He's going to tell us why he decided to create Coravin and how his passion for wine turned into the successful company that is Coravin. Before you start the podcast, just don't forget to leave us a little comment or a little review. Not a little, just a review or a comment on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Greg, welcome to Breaking the Cork.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for your time today. Are you coming often to London?
It's actually probably the city that I travel to the most.
Okay.
Outside of New York.
Nice.
And my hometown of Boston. So it's ever since Coravin, really, it's become, I wouldn't call it yet a second home, but if I had a second home, this is where it would make sense.
London.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. So where are you from originally?
I was born in New York City. Raised there until I was 11 years old in Manhattan.
Okay.
And then parents got divorced, moved to Southern California, learned how to surf, and care about cars and bathing suits. And then went to school in Boston, fell in love with the city, and that's where I live now.
So you live in Boston with your family?
I do. My kids, I'm at an interesting point in life where both of my kids have graduated college, are gainfully employed.
Okay.
One of them is protecting us from cyber attacks, and the other one is producing YouTube and Hollywood stuff. And
that's great.
yeah,
Cool.
I'm a very proud father of 2 really wonderful sons.
Oh, I guess. When you say you did some study in Boston, what kind of study? So just to get a bit of context, so now you're the founder of Coravin,
Yes.
obviously.
Yes.
But you had such an interesting background before starting Coravin.
Yeah, Coravin is a passion. It was never thought to be a career. My career started, I'm a very mission-driven guy, and so when I was young, I looked at global warming and energy production, and at the time we were beholden to oil coming out of the Middle East, and I thought, okay, well, I'll work in power production, and maybe there's a way that we can change the source of power from black stuff we pull out of the ground to fusion power. I read an article in a science magazine that convinced me, and so I went to MIT to do plasma physics in Boston and studied all the courses I could possibly take on plasma fusion, the kind of nuclear power that still doesn't work. I then went to Japan to work at Mitsubishi Heavy Industries in Kobe for a year and a half on fusion power and realized that it wasn't going to work. And so left there, came back, studied biomechanical engineering at MIT, got interested in medicine, and started designing medical products. And I've been doing that ever since I was 21.
When you say medical product, what kind of product is it exactly? Just to give a bit of perspective.
I had an extraordinarily fortunate job coming out of college, graduate school, into Pfizer. Pfizer owned 7 different medical device divisions, and they essentially taught me medicine by allowing me to invent new medical devices across the various fields that they service. So I've developed cardiac implants, cardiovascular devices, urology, obstetrics and gynecology, vascular surgery. Let's see what else. Hips, knees, trauma devices. And currently I work in spine surgery.
So basically you're still a bit in this medical industry right now.
I am. I've never left. And it's a deep, lifelong passion.
Yeah.
I tend to work on problems that my family has.
Okay.
And my mother has suffered multiple surgeries for her lower back problems. And so I founded a company to try to stop that from happening.
very good like mission.
Too late for her, but if I can help somebody else.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so at what point in your life you're like, okay, so I'm working in this medical industry, I'm doing surgery, devices. Now I got this big passion for wine and I want to create a device for the wine industry.
You know, it would sound so rational in retrospect if that's the way that it happened, but it more came from trying to solve my own problems.
Okay.
I love wine. We're in this marvelous shop and they have probably, I don't know, 6 dozen wines I've never tried before.
Yeah.
And I've been drinking wine since I was 16 illegally, when I fell in love with it. And so the reality is that I wanted to be able to explore the variety of wine at my own pace.
Okay.
I wanted to be able to learn faster than is allowed by pulling the cork and committing to 750 milliliters of a particular wine. I wanted to be able to taste a wine today to see where it was in its evolution and then taste it again next year and taste it again in 5 years and sort of learn how wine progresses without having to open a bottle each time. My spouse at the time, she didn't like the same wines that I did, so the two of us were always compromising. One of us was getting what we wanted, the other one wasn't. And so I started to get frustrated with the constraints implied by a 750 milliliter bottle of wine. I mean, it's a random volume when you think about it, right? It's sort of the right volume for 2 people. Maybe it's a little bit heavy. It's certainly tough on you if you drink a whole one on your own.
Actually, yeah, it is.
Right? It's one of the only non-single serving beverages made.
Yeah.
It's the right volume for certain times, but it's not the right volume for all these other times. I still get a lot of people who tell me, Greg, I don't need Coravin, I finished the bottle. I'm like, oh, you know, that's because you designed your wine consumption habits and behavior around this random volume of the lung volume of a glass blower in the south of England in the 1600s, right? That's what determined the volume of a bottle, right? I mean, God help you if you had to drink an amphora back in Rome all by yourself.
Yeah, oh my,
yeah, that was huge. And so I got frustrated and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to change this, for myself at least. And that was driven by my technical knowledge. So I understood needles. I developed a chemotherapy delivery system that used a needle, went into an implant under the skin. That was one of my first products at Pfizer. So I was really good at needles that didn't do damage to things. And so I knew I could put a needle through the cork. And like many physicians have, I've stuck the needle through the cork with a syringe and tried to suck the wine out. And it, you create a vacuum, and so it pulls it back. And then, you're fighting with this vacuum. So I was like, okay, I have to push the wine out. I'm a plasma physicist, so I understand inert gases. And so I sourced some nitrogen and argon and CO2 and helium. I started trying to push the wine out of the bottle and into my glass.
But how is it possible to put a needle through a cork and then removing the needle and
it closes?
And it closes.
The
bottle is still closed.
That is the magic, and it's not really my fault. The cork is the most elastic solid we have found above the surface of the ocean.
Okay.
It is a magical material. I don't know who originally discovered all of its uses. The Romans used it a ton, right? I mean, they put it in shoes, they put it in flooring. And the harvesting is beautiful if you ever go to Portugal or parts of Spain and France that do it. And they're shaving these poor trees. They look embarrassed every time they have bark. They have no bark, right? It's like a shaved sheep. But the material is magical. You can compress it 90% of its volume, and it'll bounce back to 98% of its original shape. And that same expansion that seals against the inside of the glass, that same elasticity or compression is what causes the cork hole, the hole that we make to seal. And I make this special needle. It's actually a spinal needle originally. If you've had an epidural, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's called a pencil point needle. The end of it is closed and the holes are on the side, so it pierces and opens the cork, but it doesn't remove material. And so when you remove the needle, the cork reseals.
So it's pushing the cork basically like to...
Radially outward.
Radially,
Radially outward. And so then you get the needle through the cork. You know it can reseal when you remove. Now the job is, how do I get the wine to want to leave? And so essentially what Coravin does is we inflate the bottle. Think of it like a balloon with rigid walls. We inflate the bottle with a little bit of argon gas, which is an inert gas. It's one of the ones we're breathing right now. It's 1% of the air we're breathing, but it has no chemical reactions. And so it goes into the bottle under pressure, and then that pressure pushes the wine out of the bottle into your glass. And that way, air doesn't get into the bottle. And the key to protecting wine in the long term is making sure that air doesn't get in when you're pouring and the cork reseals after you've poured what you want. And so that very first night, I poured 5 different wines, about a half a glass of each, and put all the bottles back onto my rack. And I was like, I wonder how long they're going to last. Right?
That's a surprise.
Yeah, so I started doing blind tastings and having bottles that had been accessed and bottles that hadn't been of the same wine, and having my kids pour me multiple glasses, and I didn't know which one and how many were from the bottle that was previously accessed, and I tried to see if I could tell the difference.
Nice.
And so it was a home project for 11 years.
For 11 years. So what was the biggest challenges you had when you created the Coravin, the first device?
Oh, there was I have it here with us, actually.
The first?
Yeah, I have the first one.
Oh.
Yeah. It's been sitting in my house forever, and I was like, I should really take it out and show folks, to show, actually, number one, to compliment all the engineers that I have, because they make it so much better than what I've got, or what I made. But this is the rudimentary.
This is the OG.
This is the OG. This is so my 3-year-old son at the time named it Wine Mosquito, and actually.
Actually, yeah.
Right, it's a little threatening.
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, there's something.
It looks like a science instrument, but it had all the components. It has a cylinder of compressed gas. It has a regulator that controls the pressure. It has a valve that allows the gas to go into the bottle, and when you let go, wine comes through the needle out of a little spout.
That's very interesting.
And so, the biggest challenge was not making the first prototype. I have a machine shop in my house, and so I like to tinker with things. I like to make things.
Okay.
The challenge was proving that it worked. And I had to define what worked meant. I said, 5 years from now, I want to be able to blind taste a bottle I poured multiple times versus a bottle of the same wine that I've never touched and not be able to tell the difference.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, if I can do that, then I'll have no hesitation to draw a glass from any bottle that I own, because I'll probably drink it over the course of the next 5 years.
That's true.
And so I started up these very big experiments. Then friends would come over and say, sure, it works with the California Cabernet you like, or the Barolo that your wife likes, but it'll never work with red Burgundy, or it'll never work with white Burgundy, it'll never work with Riesling, it'll never work with, you fill in the grape variety, fill in the producer, fill in the vintage.
Which actually there's no, basically, big difference in terms of substance, like the different producer or the different, wine, they always have kind of like the same chemical, except for like natural wine, if you remove the sulfite.
Oh, there we go.
But,
So that became a category. So everybody had their beliefs, and I wasn't doing chemical analysis because this wasn't a company. I was doing blind tasting because I wanted to learn about wine.
Yeah.
So I have to admit, I rather love the challenge. Like when somebody would say, it's not going to work with this grape variety. I was like, great. That gives me an excuse to buy 6 bottles of whatever that is. And I'm going to do blind tasting with it over time. Right, exactly. And so in the end, my cellar looked like a wine store.
Okay.
It's every country and all sorts of different varieties. And I was in some kind of blind tasting with all of it. And I have to admit, with some of them, in the end, I was tasting 6 glasses of wine. One of them was an unopened bottle, and 5 of them had been previously accessed over 5 years. And some of the wines, when they're bad, and I have this blind tasting, I've got to taste 6 glasses of bad wine.
Bad wine? Oh, that's not good. That's a good tasting.
No, but when it was great wine, it was wonderful.
So you create Coravin, you have the devices. The aim was to sell to businesses, restaurants, hotel, bars, or more like to the general public?
It's been a process of discovery. My first belief was I was the only one who wanted to drink like this. I didn't know that anybody else wanted. I made it for myself.
At first, just for yourself.
I didn't think
no
about
commercial intention.
Nothing whatsoever.
Okay.
I mean, I had 2 jobs. I was CEO of 2 medical companies at the time. And so I was a busy guy. I did this on nights and weekends, and it was just fun. But friends came over and saw it and said, "Hey, I'd like one of those." And so I'd make them one, and they would pay me in wine. And
they were paying you.
Yeah, and some people started to give me cases of Magnums as payment for one device.
Okay.
Okay.
Why not?
So that showed me that people found value.
Yeah.
And so then a friend of mine basically grabbed me during a breakfast we were having, and he said, "If you don't start a company, I will." So I was pulled into Coravin. Okay. And when I launched, my initial thought was consumers at home like me, because that's what my friends were like. I had taken it to a local restaurant in Boston, Grill 23, which has the best wine cellar in Boston, one of the best, if not the best. And they were very excited by it. And so I thought restaurants, and we actually tested Coravin prototypes in restaurants for 2 years before we launched.
Okay.
Wineries started to find out about it in California. They wanted to be able to use it. So I started to get a sense that there's a it's a very rare situation where one product works across multiple markets inside of, or sub-markets inside of an industry. And so without modification, I started to get that sense. I didn't realize it was going to be used as aggressively as it has been by importers, distributors, salespeople who sell wine to restaurants. That was shocking.
I'm using it.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I'm using it a lot.
Thank you very much. It's one of our top customers, actually. So, it was sort of an exposure of more and more passionate segments, I think, of the wine industry. And I think that's something that's very true about wine, is that it is a beverage that instigates passion, positively or negatively.
Yeah.
Because there was very negative response to Coravin early on as well as very positive response.
Okay.
But
do you
that's
have any example of like negative and positive, obviously, feedback you had on the Coravin? Because to be fair, I mean, I'm using it since many years. I can see only like the positive aspects of the product. I don't really see any negative aspect. Obviously, if you use like the Coravin pivot, and you keep the bottle for 1 year.
Yeah,
it's not going to work, but it's not the aim of the product.
That's true, and thank you for that. I think there were two different types of negative response. One is it doesn't work.
Okay.
And so I held it, the same kind of blind tastings that I'd done at home. I held it for sommelier and winemakers around the world, and consumers. And then the other one was, you're getting between the person and the wine, the tradition, the defenders of the tradition.
Okay.
And so one very wonderful case, a guy named Justin Leone, who was the head sommelier at a restaurant in Tantris, named Tantris in Munich, wrote one of the best pieces of writing, I still have it on my wall, about how, I was the second shooter on the grassy knoll, that my cellar was a bunch of hormone-stuck piglets, that Coravin was the GMO of wine, and it's this hate letter that got me to fly to Munich and go to his restaurant and meet him and talk to him and understand why he thought that way. And it took me from my reservation, I think it was 6 p.m., and I left at around 4 a.m.
Wow, talking about this.
Sitting in his cellar, absolutely hammered by that time. And he converted.
Good.
So we had a great long argument, but it's important to listen to, as an inventor, it's important to listen to negative feedback as strongly as positive, to try to understand where it's coming from. And then honestly, the different wine regions responded very differently. Bordeaux walked me out half the time.
Bordeaux?
Yeah.
Really?
The most conservative of the wine regions that I ran into. And what was interesting was that the most accepting wine industry was sort of shocking, was Burgundy.
Okay.
Burgundy was like, wonderful, we love this, thank you. They have such low production.
Yeah.
They can't afford to pull corks for everybody who comes by.
Maybe that's why. And Bordeaux, they have a huge, especially now we can see they have too much volume.
It's like, we call it the Kansas of wine production. Like it's just this massive, you go there and it takes you 2 hours to drive from one village to another village.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's massive.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's a great industry. And I love Bordeaux. And to be fair, some of the Bordeaux producers were very accepting.
Okay. So you're going to focus first more on the public, and then you discover that actually restaurants, bars can be as well a huge client for you. Now, in terms of business, what's your biggest market?
It's something that we look into a lot because it's not necessarily easy to track.
Okay.
People can buy at retail, they can buy online, they can buy from us online, they can buy from Amazon. But we have a pretty good sense. It varies a lot by country, a lot. The United States is probably about 90% consumer.
Okay.
The UK is probably about 60% trade.
I will say there's a lot of trade in UK using...
Trade is the highest density city in the world using Coravin in the trade is London. This is our benchmark. If we can make all cities like London, we would be in great shape.
We'll be the best.
The best. Yeah, no, London's been accepting of Coravin from the beginning, and marvelously so. Creative uses across the restaurant trade. Now sparkling, for example, the very first sparkling wine producer to use Coravin commercially outside of Moet Hennessy, who helped us develop it, was 100 Hills.
Oh, really?
Stephen.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice. Okay.
And he was the very first sparkling producer to keep a bottle of wine for a year.
For a year.
Yeah,
Okay,
coming
using
back every
it.
couple of months, testing it.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
the one we're going to try after, basically. We're going to have a blind tasting
It is.
with the sparkling. And one bottle has been opened a month ago.
Yep.
And the other bottle is not open yet.
Yeah. That's
So it's going to be a blind tasting. And we will try this in a couple of minutes.
Stephen, who owns 100 Hills, is a scientist at heart, and he's I love the guy. You meet so many wonderful people in the wine industry.
Yeah.
English sparkling, good people making great wine is not uncommon in the wine industry.
That's true.
So France is consumer. It's like the United States.
Yeah.
Australia is the trade, like the UK.
You're in almost all big country.
We're in
big
60,
capital.
yeah.
60 country. Wow.
It's amazing. I did not see this when I started with this first prototype in my basement. No, it's been a great ride.
When you create Coravin, obviously it costs kind of money to create these devices.
Yeah.
Do you ask for a financial fund like business angel, for example? Do you put some of your money? How do you start this company, basically?
Yeah, luckily I'd started multiple medical device companies. And so I had a group of investors, institutional investors, venture capitalists, who had made investments in my medical businesses. They do not have the mandate to invest in an oddball company like Coravin that does wine-related stuff. But the individual partners of those venture capital firms have become my friends. And so they invested. Surgeons that I worked with.
Nice.
If you think about people that drink wine, it's doctors, lawyers, and bankers.
Yeah,
And doctors were my friends. And
Okay.
so they invested. And then I found a family fund, or they found me.
Okay.
An exceedingly passionate and absolutely brilliant man that is managing the funds of his family that was actually became very wealthy due to medical. Really spectacular guy, has been very generous with funding of the business. And it's as a CEO and an entrepreneur or entrepreneur founder at Coravin, one of your goals is to make your investors money if you can. I raised that first round of financing, which was just around $1 million in probably 2 weeks. And so I work every day knowing the responsibility that I have to return on investment.
Okay, wow.
So it was surprisingly easy.
I don't want to ask the question of how much you raise, because I don't think it's the aim of the podcast, but roughly, do you need a lot of fund to create, for example, Coravin? If tomorrow there's a young creator, founder who wants to create a company and invent something as well, like you.
It all depends on speed. What is your interest in speed? Speed costs money. And so if you want to grow quickly, so we launched in the United States in July of 2013. We started selling in Harrods, our first place outside of the United States, and Daniel Primack here in London in October of 2013. So it's pretty quick.
Yeah, it's very fast.
France, 2014. All of Europe, end of 2014. Asia, 2015. Very
Quick.
fast. We sold out very quickly after we launched, and so we recognized there was more of an interest than we'd expected, and so we've pushed pretty hard. So we've raised in the tens of millions. Do you need to raise tens of millions of dollars to do something like this? I don't think so. You could go slower, and if it was a hobby company, I would have.
10 million is a lot for a hobby.
But it's a lot for a hobby. But I wanted. My goal in my entrepreneurial work is to positively influence as many people's lives as I can before I die. So medicine, it's obvious. Every patient that is treated with one of my devices, hopefully I've made their life better. And with Coravin, one of the things that I've come to realize is that wine is part of quality of life. And if you can improve somebody's quality of life by making sure that they have a perfect glass of whatever it is that they want, whenever they want, whether it's at a restaurant or at a home or at a winery, you can add to their quality of life. And so for me, I measure the success of Coravin by the total number of glasses that have been poured through one of our systems, or by our systems, so Pivot and Sparkling now. And we're in the hundreds of millions of glasses. And that means that hundreds of millions of individual moments, but in some way touched by us. And so that speed, for me, was important.
Okay.
I also didn't know if there were going to be competitors. I didn't know what was going to happen. Turns out there haven't been.
Not much, actually.
Nothing yet. We try to stay on top. We try to keep improving. We try to make it better. We listen to our customers now. One of the advantages of there's a big disadvantage to being the first, and that is that you have to do all the mistakes. The big advantage of it is that you get to be the first person in front of a customer with a complaint, and so you can fix it, make it better.
Any example of the biggest mistake you make can be as an entrepreneur or as the founder of Coravin?
There's things I would love to do again. Sure.
Maybe something like you will maybe do again, but it was a mistake, but you learn from it.
I did. We launched a digital product called the Model 11. I have this dream. When I founded the company, I said, faster, easier, more fun than pulling a cork.
Nice.
So how do we make Coravin faster, easier, and more fun than pulling the cork? And if it's that transparent, then why not? Right? If it works and it's so easy to use, heck, why not? And so with Timeless, which is the modern version of our needle-based system, we had a device called Model 11, and Model 11, we made some design choices that really limited it. It's great, it pours itself, it's automatic, it's lovely, it meets that goal. But it has some design choices that we made that are serious limitations. I wish I could have done it again.
Okay.
And I've invested some R&D, I've over-invested in some R&D that I could have taken slower because the market for that product really didn't exist. It's a new product called Vinitas. I wish I had sort of been more careful in the slow rollout of that system, just to sort of, one of the complexities of wine, the only real complexity of alcohol, is the legality, right? You can't bottle something in Barolo that's under a 375 milliliter and call it Barolo. You can't, there's all these rules about packaging and labeling, and oh my God. And so the beautiful thing about Coravin is that we were not wine. And so we had the freedom to go into any country almost without regulation, right? Prove that we're food safe and we're there, right?
That's true.
With very few exceptions. And then we started to do this Vinitas system, which involves wine and the labeling, the legality, and all that stuff just sort of slows you down. And our company's not good at that. I wanted to stick to my knitting, I guess, and serve people wine.
Okay.
I will, and it's not a terrible mistake, but it's something I wish.
But it's nice. Because I already say this in a previous podcast, but we're always talking about the good things about being a founder or an entrepreneur, and I guess obviously, if you want to be a good entrepreneur, you have to make mistakes, to learn from it.
And you have no one to blame but yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, and I feel like it's great. I'm not saying you have to make mistakes. Obviously, you're gonna try to not make some. Yeah. But obviously, sometimes you don't. Really have choice. You need to make some mistakes to learn from it and to do better.
You do, and the wonderful thing about wine and wine service is that even when you make mistakes, it's still wine. Yeah, it's still joy. Yeah. It's still, people relaxing and talking to each other, and
that's the beauty of our industry. Basically,
it is it's an enjoyment industry.
Exactly.
Even I know I've had a lot of people say that I use Coravin during the week when I'm on my own and I want a really wonderful glass and I want to disconnect from the world and I just don't want Instagram or Twitter or phone or email or calls, and I can just sit there and focus on this perfect glass of wine, sparkling or still, and enjoy myself and sort of reset. And I believe that in the modern era that is more of a necessity than it has been in the past, because you're so connected all the time. And wine is, at least for me, it's not just the social piece. It's also the refocusing, simplification. It's an 8,000-year-old beverage, right? Yeah. So it's at least. So it has that connection to the earth and reconnection to yourself. And I love that about wine. There's very few things that are like that.
Probably one of the best product the human made since
we're pretty good.
After cheese.
Cheese. We're just saying this big cheese cave right here.
We're talking about the cheese every time. Yeah. I think we're gonna start the blind tasting.
Great.
Probably right now.
Yeah, let's do it.
Eric.
There we go. 100 Hills Rosé.
100 Hills Rosé. We now have 3 glasses in front of us.
They're all the same wine.
Yeah.
And at least one of the glasses is from a bottle that was opened about a month ago.
Exactly. And the other bottle was opened a few minutes ago.
Yeah. And we have to see if we can tell the difference. And this is really how Coravin was tested and developed. By the way, this is how I spent my pandemic. My job was to test Coravin Sparkling. It was a pretty otherwise good pandemic.
Yeah, that's a good pandemic plan.
Oh, yeah. I love this wine. This guy's great.
It's gonna be a bit difficult. 10:30 in the morning on a Wednesday. Blend testing of sparkling.
Oh, no. What?
I just finished my coffee. Perfect.
First of all,
the wine is great.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
Oh, man, that's a lovely wine.
Yeah, that's very good.
All right. One of the tricks of, other than the 3 glasses, you don't know which and how many, the other trick is always use great wine.
I like what you said to Eric before.
Yeah.
If you want to say it again, you was like,
Yeah.
I got 2 tips.
Yeah,
for
2
blind
tips.
testing.
One is have a low random odds of selecting correctly, and this type of a test is a triangle test. It has a 1 in 6 chance of randomly guessing correctly, which is great.
Yeah.
And then the other test is the other part of this. The trick of this blind tasting is always serve delicious wine, so that people are enjoying their time. And we are lucky to work with some great wineries around the world, so we always have access. The good news is that I developed this for myself and tested this myself, and so I know I can't tell, but I will be part of the random guessing because I also don't. I designed it so that I couldn't. There's some features to Coravin Sparkling that make it work as well as it does, and they're all from my engineering team. One is the materials we use to seal the bottle.
Okay.
Silicon rubber allows oxygen to transfer through, and unfortunately the wine industry has used silicon rubber as a stopper forever, and it just doesn't work. And so we found a different material that doesn't allow any oxygen in or CO2 out, even over a year, which is crazy. We're still working on how long wines can be preserved, and it does depend a little bit on the type of wine. We preserve pet nat for a month, but champagnes for 3 to 6 months, maybe longer.
And what's the main reason of like you can keep champagne for quite a long time, but in terms of pet nat is
still alive.
Tricky. Because it's still alive.
It's still alive and highly variable, even bottle to bottle. It's hard to do a blind tasting with pet nat just because 2 bottles that you open can be different.
I was about to say I love pet nat and I love natural wine.
Yeah, me too.
If you look at my Instagram, most of it is natural. But with the pet nat, I feel like even if the bottle is not open yet, and you open 2 different bottles, you kind of like, guessing on the result, like, is it going to be good, not good, it's going to be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's always very tricky. I love it, because champagne, you open a bottle of champagne, you don't thinking, oh.
Is this going to be bad?
Yeah.
Yeah, and or is it going to be different from another bottle? And actually, that was a big part of my scientific endeavor to blind taste wines, is if I ran into a wine that was highly variable, just 2 bottles, it was impossible to do blind tasting with them. So I did find during the testing of Coravin Sparkling a pet nat that is very, very, very stable from bottle. The Italians do natural wine extremely well, and they do pet nat very, very well. And there was I think it was Lumani was the name of the producer, and his bottles were absolutely identical across
all the same,
always. And so I was like, okay, this is my benchmark. This is the one that I can use as my test for pet nat. And that's part of all of the testing is, can you find the edge case? What is the worst case? So one part of the stopper is the materials. The other part of the stopper is it fits on every bottle, from a half bottle to most Magnums. The challenge with champagne bottles is that they're so variable, right? And sparkling wine bottles. So we had to design this system that really does fit on pretty much everything. And then the last was restoring the pressure on the inside of the bottle. So we use pure carbon dioxide to repressurize the bottle after you've served the wine.
Okay.
And we had to pick a pressure. So what pressure do you use? Do you use Prosecco at 2 atmospheres, or do you use California Sparkling at 7 atmospheres? Or do you use Champagne, which is somewhere between 3 and 6?
Yeah.
And so we did a lot of experimentation with people and different wines. We had to find the lowest pressure and the highest pressure. And we found that right around 4 to 4.2 bar is perfect. High pressure stuff had so much dissolved CO2 in the liquid that very little left to balance the pressure above and below, and we had 4.2 bar above. And if you overpressurize Prosecco, you can tell. Now, interestingly, most people prefer the overpressure.
I would say I would prefer it.
Right. So we were like, okay, well, if people would prefer that and they're upset when a high pressure drops, we'll set it at this one pressure. And that was probably 2 years of our work.
In the future or near future, to maybe, how can I say, to modify the pressure directly on the Coravin, like saying 2, 4, 6, 7, function of the spot.
I am thinking of it for the trade. The consumer is really not as interested in that. And in blind tasting, we'll test. Although these guys are probably around 5 bar. So it's going to be difficult to tell.
You know you're with a wine expert when he can tell you bars there's in the wine.
I have a weird knowledge I have a different perspective because I have different needs of wine.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I do work very hard on is to not let my scientific activities get in the way of my joy associated with that. I mean, I love 100 Hills. I love this wine.
Big up 100 Hills. Thank you for the bottle.
Yeah, thank you very much. But I love English sparkling because of what it is. You know, high acid, really fresh, really clean most of the time. Although now you do see the whole variety of dosage levels and acid levels and whatever, but there's a general bias toward more acidity, and I love acidity and freshness. We were just talking with the guys here about a sect made from Gruneveltliner that's in a bottle behind me that I'm probably going to wind up buying before I leave. And you know, he loves the wine, and for good reason, I'm sure. So there's this variety that I still love. I just wanted to make sure that Coravin didn't get in the way of enjoying it. So
we have to make some guesses.
I'll ask you two questions while you're thinking about which wine is which. Number one, are any of the glasses off, like they're oxidized or flat, like they'd been opened for a while?
No.
The second question is, are all of the glasses servable to a guest or a friend as an example of that wine? In other words, if you were in a restaurant, would you serve?
To be fair, I will serve the 3 of them to a restaurant, probably. I have some doubt for 2 glasses.
Okay.
With like the 1 and the 3.
Okay.
Yeah. But I will serve all of them. I feel like the 2 is the more fresh.
Okay. So you're guessing that glasses 1 and 3 are from the previously opened bottle?
Yeah, previously. Actually, I tried the 2 again.
I love the deliberation. It's a very important part. The longer it takes somebody to make their choice, the happier I am.
I have two choices, like 2 guesses. What's the third thing you wanted to ask?
Normally, is there any differences between the glasses that are greater than bottle-to-bottle variability? As we were discussing with PetNat, right? There can be variability in bottles.
No, these, to be fair, the 3, there's no cork wine, there's no bad wine. They're all good. I will serve the 3 of them.
If you stop there, we have already won.
Yeah.
This bottle was opened
a month ago,
right?
Yeah.
And that's the goal. Mm. Are they servable? Are they enjoyable? Are they things that represent that winery? You know, would you serve Stephen his own wine like these? If the answer is yes, then the rest of it is just a scientific game and statistical odds. And so what is your final answer, sir?
I would say the 2 is the fresh bottle, and the 1 and 3 are the Coravin bottle.
I am going to guess that 1 is the Coravin bottle and 2 and 3 are the fresh bottle.
So should I tell you the answer?
Yeah. Let's find out what the answer is.
So number 1 and 3 is from the fresh bottle.
Already?
And number 2 is the Coravin.
It's the Coravin bottle. So it's the opposite of what I said.
It's the exact opposite of what you said.
That's great.
That's a great answer for you. It's a bad from me.
Not at all. This is not like a normal blind tasting. Thank you for doing that. That's great. They were delicious to me, and I, of course, got it wrong.
Yeah.
This is not uncommon, by the way.
Okay.
So Ruinart is Frederic Panayotis I'm very close with, and he is a geek like I am. And he is doing currently the Ruinart Sommelier Challenge globally.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So he's been all over the United States, all over Europe. We're going to be meeting in Japan. And he has used Coravin Sparkling for a very long time, probably the longest. Mm. And he took Magnums of either his Blanc de Blanc or his Rosé, and he took half of them out and used Coravin to preserve them. And he's been serving them blind to sommelier in every city around the world, about 30 people at a time, and blind tasting them in exactly this way with the triangle test. And he has found that the number that were correctly guessed is exactly equal to random.
Okay.
And that if there was any bias, people preferred the previously opened bottle,
the Coravin,
to the unopened bottle.
I prefer as well the number 2 with the Coravin in this experience. But I'm gonna tell you why. It's just because for me it feels like I want to say fresh, but it's going to the opposite because it was open a month ago, so it's not fresh. It's fizzy just enough. The bubbles are perfect, very soft. Very subtle.
Well, we'll not tell Stephen. Yeah, he's the owner of the over the vineyard. Yeah, Stephen's great of 100 Hills.
It's maybe it's a random question, but like, was your after like all this blind testing, all this normal testing as well, was your favorite region? I know it's very random as a question, and
Well, it's one of the reasons I founded Coravin was because of my love of the breadth of wine. But I would say, probably 5 years ago, I would have said Syrah, no question. Syrah. I love the Rhône. I love the Northern Rhône. I love Côte-Rôtie, Cornas.
nice.
I love Hermitage. I fell in love with it with Chave. And-
Jean-Louis Chave.
Yeah, Jean-Louis Chave and Alain Graillot and some other producers. But now, my love of the breadth of Syrah from the Northern Rhône knows no bounds. Right?
Yeah.
I will drink. I will drink and enjoy any of it.
Okay.
I just think it's brilliant. I love the way that Syrah changes over time. I love how it starts as white pepper and turns into forest and then turns into bacon, meat, and blood and olives, and that it's so far from a grape, right? That that Syrah never tastes like the plant that it came
grapes.
from, right? Never. And it's a meal unto itself.
Yeah.
That would have been my answer. Now it also is sparkling wine, champagne. I'm obsessed. Ever since developing Coravin Sparkling, I just think the big houses and the growers working, almost hand in hand, not really as competitors, they're advancing this region beyond where it already was advanced, right? And creating this broader spectrum of exploration. I go to Cave de Forum in Reims. I go to the guy at the front desk and I take him downstairs and say, I have 6 bottle spaces in my suitcase. Choose whatever the heck you're drinking, and I'm taking that back with me.
That's good.
And he always picks something really,
Find something
good. And I have not found a bottle that he selected that I dislike. And in fact, I would say 100% of them I love.
You can't go wrong with champagne.
You can't.
Or sparkling, anyway.
I was going to say, Oregon, I was just in Oregon. Oregon's making great sparkling wine. I've been in Tasmania. Tasmania makes great sparkling wine.
Yeah. English
sparkling.
It's amazing.
Up and down.
Yeah.
2016 Gusbourne Rosé. I remember the first time I tasted it, I was like, huh.
Gusbourne is good.
Yeah, that's crazy great.
Yeah.
Well done, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very great. The only thing I will say about the English sparkling, but it's not very like a negative thing, but it's just the price. It's sometimes a bit expensive. But I get it, because I know England is not a country made for wine.
Yeah, they're dealing
so
with
they have
mold
to
and
create
mildew.
everything.
Yeah,
so you have to build everything. You have to invest million into a vineyard.
Their yield is low.
So it kind of makes sense. But obviously sometimes it's just the little thing where you're like, 50 quid for a bottle, 60 quid.
Oh, you got to come to the United States. We're used to it. That's what champagne costs.
Yeah, I know.
You guys are lucky you're here. And I guess it is expensive, but I always have some. I always have some English sparkling at home.
I'm still buying it.
Yeah,
it's expensive. I fuck it.
They know me too well.
They know me too. And so just to finish the podcast, Greg, I just want to ask, what's next for Coravin? Any new exciting projects? New device?
I think a couple of things. I'm beginning to focus on not the device, but on. We have this incredible opportunity to work with wineries, to work with distributors and importers, to work with restaurants and the consumer. And when you think about Coravin, we sort of connect all of them. And with equal enthusiasm across the board. The distributor wants to sell their wine, the winery wants to sell their wine, the restaurant wants to serve their wine, the consumer wants to drink the wine. And all of that can be done with Coravin. I really want to crack, because I want us, and I think our head of marketing, Katie, has started to do this with a brilliant insight, and she started this world wine tour where we're working with distributors and wineries, and we're connecting them with restaurants, and we're offering really unique wines through the restaurant to the consumer. I love that idea of connection, and Coravin acting as a hub in a way of connecting all these parts of the industry that want to work together anyway and make the customer happy. And I'm the customer in the end. And so I've focused a lot in my career at Coravin on technology and device and everything else. And I would like to turn a little bit of the focus on, is there some new magic we can help create in part through the use of our systems to connect various parts of the industries in a new way.
Okay.
And so that's one piece. And then, of course, there's always technology, right? It's one of the reasons I'm in the field as much as I'd like to hear from people what their complaints are, what they think the opportunities are. I talked to a bunch of sommeliers 2 days ago, and here in London, and a couple on Friday, and I'm going to be in France again in a week, and I'll be in Germany next week.
Nice. Mostly Paris, or a bit in the countryside?
Quite a bit in the countries. I mean, the wine regions, so Bordeaux, Burgundy, are big for us. Champagne is now huge for us. Coravin Sparkling has done extremely well in the restaurant.
So cool.
I have to say that Burgundy is like London's in this way. The London is the highest density usage of Coravin in the restaurant.
Yeah.
Burgundy is the highest density usage of Coravin in the winery.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
That's nice.
No, they've been huge for us.
Thank you very much, Greg, for today.
Thank
you
you
very much for your time. It was a pleasure. Hope you enjoyed the podcast.
I very much did.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for inviting me on.
Yeah.
And thank you for introducing me to this part of London, which I did.
To Bermondsey Corner. So yeah, sorry guys, I forgot, but we are in Bermondsey Corner today. So it's a bottle shop and bars on Bermondsey Street. They have a really good selection of natural wine, cheese as well. They have a lot of things. So if you're in Bermondsey Street, don't hesitate to pop by. And thank you very much again for listening. Don't forget to leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcast. And I will see you next week with Quentin for a new episode. And thank you again, Greg.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.
Take care.
The Hospitality Podcast.